Today we're going to cover a full flight in Microsoft Flight Simulator with Beyond ATC Flight Following. This is their Stage 2 VFR. This video is going to have chapters, so if you're here for specific parts, please feel free to flip around. I'm going to start with some basic VFR planning for BATC. This is not intended to be anything like real-world flight planning, and so all you CFIs and students and such can just hold your tongues, please. This is simplified for casual sim pilots looking to explore Beyond ATC in VFR. After that, I'll go ahead and show the flight that I'm planning, and I'll discuss my thoughts about where BATC is at right now that I'm freed from the cone of silence that we're expected to maintain during testing. So let's get into it. So let's take a look at how we might plan a flight through a busy airspace. Now, this isn't going to be exactly the way it would be done in a real-world flight. And the reason why is that Bravo airspaces have VFR transitions within them that you're expected to use whenever possible. And as a general rule, a VFR pilot does use those and kind of tries to avoid getting into other parts of the class Bravo. It's a lot more headache for the controllers if you're in the rest of the Bravo, and it's a lot more workload on the pilot as well. So generally, it's avoided, and just the way the system works. However, for today's purpose, since the transition routes don't really work in Beyond ATC for VFR, and they may never work, and the reason why is that data is just not exposed from Flight Simulator. So BATC doesn't know where those transition routes are, and it's not really clear how they might be able to determine that, short of hand coding every one of them, which doesn't make a lot of sense because they change from time to time. Instead, what I've done here is we're going to route ourselves kind of around the core of the Bravo airspace. Let's take a real quick look at the airspaces that are in play for our flight today. These magenta markings here, the circles, for those of you that don't know VFR charts, I'm going to go into a little extra detail here. So in this case, these magenta markings here are a Class Charlie airspace, and specifically it's for the Burbank Airport, which is located here at the center. The magenta markings, or the writing, relates to that airspace, and these are showing the top and the bottom of that airspace in different sectors. So over the airport, it goes from 4,800 feet at the top down to the surface, and that covers most of this ring here. Anything inside this where you don't cross any border is that rule. This cutout accommodates Whiteman Airfield, which is where we're going to be taking off, and you can see here that the more teal-colored dotted lines are Delta airspace that belong to Whiteman and to Van Nuys over here. So the Van Nuys airspace and the Whiteman airspace both go from the surface up to 3,000 feet. Van Nuys is a full-sized Delta with a 5 miles, and Whiteman gets this sort of reduced circle on the side that faces Burbank for reasons of controlling this airspace down here. And you can see it's a pretty crowded place just because of the way these airfields were built, 100 years ago. It probably wouldn't be done this way today. Anyways, so for the purposes of our flight, it's going to be easiest to get flight following before we even get off the ground at Whiteman. And what that does is allows for the controllers to coordinate our crossing into the Charlie airspace here, which we're necessarily going to go that way. You could go out north and around, but it's not that hard to coordinate a transit through Charlie. And basically, Charlie rules are just that you have a transponder, you're in contact with the controlling agency. That's about all you really need. You need to have two-way conversation with them before you enter a Charlie. And if they need you to stay out, they'll tell you to stay out. So you don't really get a specific clearance into Charlie airspace. It's implied by the fact that you're talking to that approach controller. But if they tell you, stand by or remain clear of Charlie airspace, then you do need to do that. Anyways, exploring this further for those of you that don't understand charts, out here you can see 4830, and it's telling you the ceiling is 48 and the floor is at 3,000. And that makes sense because below 3,000 is where the Delta airspace for the other two airports is. So that's why they set it up that way. So we're going to get flight following. We're going to take off from Whiteman going southeast here, and we're heading down to this intersection, Darts. You don't necessarily need to use an intersection. I just set it up that way to make the routing more visible on the chart here. So we'll be on the phone with SoCal the whole way through here. And then if we were to continue, if we went direct to Long Beach is down here, and that's where we're going today, we would cross right through the middle of the Bravo, and that doesn't make anybody's life easy. There is these magenta arrows here show you where the VFR transitions actually do exist within the Bravo. And if they were fully supported by VATSIM, I would use one of those and show you how they get used. But so what BATC will do is if you approach the Bravo, it's going to go ahead and clear you through the Bravo airspace, which is fine. In the real world, it would be a little trickier than that, but within the confines of what you can do with software, it's not unreasonable for BATC to just pass you right on through here. But in the real world, if we didn't have these transitions available, it would be pretty easy to just fly around the core of the Los Angeles Bravo airspace here. So Bravo is this solid kind of teal blue line, and all of these little lines across it are just different sectors and blocks of it. And they all have their own altitude constraints, just like we saw in the Charlie, only it's bigger. So what I've done here is we're flying north of the Bravo airspace up here until we get kind of clear of this section that goes down to very low altitudes. You can see here it goes up to 10,000 feet and it comes down to 2,500 feet here, 2,000 here, and down to the surface closer to the airport. By staying over here, we can pick an appropriate cruising altitude of, in this case, we're going to be at 3,500 for our cruise. So we'll take off, we'll climb to 3,500, we're going to go to Darts. We're going to head east from there out to, so we're going to fly out to Santa Anita Racetrack, which is BPRT, Big Horse Racetrack here in Southern California. And once we get to there, we're going to go ahead and turn more or less south, and it's going to bring us through this section of the Bravo, or below this section of the Bravo, where the floor of it is 4,000 feet. So the idea here is we're going to stay outside of that controlled airspace by staying low. We'll come down to the vicinity of Fullerton Airport here. Fullerton is a Bravo at 2,500 feet is the top of their airspace, so we'll be above that. And then we'll make a turn and head back west toward Long Beach, which is our destination. And at that point, you can see that the Bravo airspace, marked by the same color as the Bravo markings, are 10,000 ceiling and 5,000 floor. So we'll be well below that and 6,000 foot floor over here. And BATC is pretty generous with its handoffs. So what will probably happen is around 10 miles out from Long Beach, which will be really close to where Fullerton Airport is here, where we're going to be turning anyway, we'll probably get handed off from the approach controller to the Long Beach Tower at that point, and they'll get us in on whatever runway is appropriate. So that's our basic route. We'll be out of Whiteman. We're going to fly down to Darts. We're going to go from Darts over to Santa Anita, and then we'll fly south, staying at 3,500 feet, which will bring us under the floor of the Bravo here. And then we'll come over into Long Beach. This is how you might plan a flight if you didn't want to deal with the Bravo. And in real life, you wouldn't want to deal with the Bravo, but you could in BATC fly direct, and the controllers will coordinate everything for you, get you cleared into the Bravo and out and everything. But I wanted to show something that would be maybe a little more reasonable, considering we don't have these transition routes available to us. So let's get into the actual flight and how it looks in BATC. We're now in Flight Simulator, obviously. I've got our origin and destination airport set. If you want to, without having to dig around too much in the flight plan, so you can set waypoints in here right from the map screen. I don't know if everybody knows this, so I'm going to show how you do it real quick. What you can do is in the filters options down here, navigation, you can set fixes and RNAV positions, and that'll give you all of the different intersections, well, maybe not all, but many of the different intersections and whatnot that you might want to use for your flight planning. So I believe this is going to be Dart. Yeah, so all you can just right click on, or rather click on that, left click, and you can say add, and it'll pull your line right over to it. And then we're going to go out here to, this is the racetrack we talked about. So we're going to click that and add. And then we wanted Fullerton Airport, which I always lose in the mess here. Why doesn't Fullerton just pop up? It's an airport. Should just show. Oh, there it is. Okay. So click and add. Okay. So now our flight plan here is basically the same as it was, and we can shut off all this extra clutter. Again, that was our nav. You can put in nav aids like VORs and whatnot if you wanted to as well. Let's get rid of all that, and now we have a flight plan that looks just like the one that I showed you in charts earlier. Today we'll be using the lovely little Beach Sierra from FlySimware. It's one of my favorites for VFR flights. I tried to use the default planes for these types of tutorials because I would rather be flying something that everybody has rather than an add-on, but since Microsoft steadfastly refuses to fix the fact that the 172 only has a metric altimeter, which is about as useless to an American as a chocolate bar in a forest fire, we'll use this plane, which is also a very simple aircraft. Okay, so we got the engine started up. I didn't bother to show you that. I figure you've seen it enough time. Real quick, I'm going to set my flight plan up in the Garmin 750 here. And the easiest way to do this is just waypoint by waypoint. So as we talked about before, we're going to darts. And then we're going to VPLRT, yeah. LRT, enter. And then we're going to go to K-full. A quick look here, make sure the distances all make sense and we haven't accidentally picked up something from halfway around the world. That all looks good to me. I'm going to put that in. Go back to the map, and we will have our flight plan on here, just like we had it in charts and in the map screen. I can zoom out here a bit, and you can see that. Okay, so at this point we're basically ready to go. Over on the side here we have the Beyond ATC in-game toolbar, which I've started using a little more recently. As of this version of flights, or as of the VFR versions of BATC, you can select between whether your plan's in SimBrief or in Flight Sim. We did ours in Flight Sim, so we're going to select that option, and BATC will get itself all configured.
Beyond ATC connected.
I'm going to do the first bit of this just using the menus, kind of give you a look at how that works. So basically you can come in here, click the frequencies tab, and you've got everything related to your flight. Ever since they added the dynamic airport loading, you can manually tune airports along your route if you want, but they won't show up on this list because the list would constantly be getting bigger and smaller, and in an urban area like where we're flying today, it would be unmanageable. So let's get our ATIS real quick.
Landing and departing runway 12, bird activity in vicinity of airport. Advise on initial contact. You have information November.
November. Where's my pen?
Whiteman Airport information November. 1849er Zulu. Wind 160 at 3. Visibility 10. Sky condition clear. Temperature tree 2. Dew point 1 tree. Altimeter tree 002. Landing and departing runway 12. Bird activity in vicinity of airport. Advise on initial contact. You have information November.
All right, so we got that. I'm going to go over to ground.
Whiteman ground, November 130 Juliet Mike with information November, ready to copy IFR clearance to Van Nuys.
That's a funny request because Van Nuys Airport's about 5 miles away.
November 130 Juliet Mike, Whiteman ground, thanks for November, cleared to Van Nuys Airport. Radar vectors Fillmore, Dennis filed. Maintain 5,000, expect 2000 feet 10 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 120.4, squawk 0214.
And we're going to request departure with flight following in this case. And we're going out to the southeast.
Whiteman ground, November 734 Delta Bravo at ramp 36, Beach Sierra. Request taxi for VFR departure to the southeast with flight following.
November 734 Delta Bravo, departure frequency 120.4, squawk 4226.
Departure on 120.4, squawk 4226 for Delta Bravo.
November 734 Delta Bravo, runway 12, taxi via Alpha.
Taxi runway 12 via Alpha, Beechcraft 734 Delta Bravo. Okay, so we have our squawk dialed in there. We're on standby right now on our altimeter. We've got our numbers for altimeter, and that's about it for now. So let's go ahead and get going. We've already been cleared to taxi, so we'll do that.
November 130 Juliet Mike, request taxi.
November 130 Juliet Mike, runway 12 taxi via Alpha.
Runway 12 taxi via Alpha, November 130 Juliet Mike.
So for those of you who haven't yet seen it, BATC now supports taxi arrows. So let me just stop here. You can get to them from the settings cog, and it's right here, the very top selection. You can also set a hotkey for it if you like, which would make a lot of sense. In this case, it's selected kind of an oddball route to the runway for us, so I'm going to kind of disregard the first part. You can see the pink arrows over there. But we're going to follow that little piper who has for some reason been cleared to 12,000 feet to go 5 miles.
November 130 Juliet Mike, contact Whiteman Tower 135.0.
Contact Tower 135.0, November 130 Juliet Mike.
I'm going to go ahead and shut off the taxi arrows. I just wanted to give you a quick look at them. They're not handy at small airports like this, but at bigger places you might like them.
Beach 4 Delta Bravo, contact Whiteman Tower 135.0, good day.
Over the tower on 135.0, Beach 734 Delta Bravo, good day. Real world, when they hand you off like that, you typically do your run up and everything before actually bothering tower. You don't need to really, you'd be monitoring tower, which is what we're doing now, until you're ready to go. We're going to skip the run up today because this plane doesn't really do failures, so there's no point. And it saves us time for this. We are out of here. We need some flaps. Whiteman Tower, Beach 734, Delta Bravo is ready to go at 12.
Beach 4 Delta Bravo, runway 12, line up and wait.
Line up and wait for Delta Bravo. All right, strobes on, landing lights on, and transponder to altitude reporting.
Beach 4 Delta Bravo, wind 160 at 3, runway 12, cleared for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, runway 12 for Delta Bravo.
November 130 Juliet Mike, contact SoCal departure. Contact SoCal departure, November 130 Juliet Mike, have a good day.
All right, positive rate, gear up. Flaps coming up. And we'll maintain full power for the first 1,000 here. And we'll adjust a bit.
Beach 4 Delta Bravo, contact SoCal departure 120.4.
Over to 120.4, Beach 4 Delta Bravo. Good day. SoCal departure, Beach 734 Delta Bravo with you through 1,900.
November 734 Delta Bravo, good day, radar contact.
I'm actually going to shortcut darts a little bit here. Sometimes if you get too close to the Bravo, because of the way BATC is working right now, it'll just give you the clearance through the Bravo. And my intent right now is to show the, show how I would do it, if I wasn't going into Bravo. So we'll see if we can skirt by them this time without having it catch that.
November 734 Delta Bravo, contact SoCal approach 134.2.
Over to approach on 134.2, beach 4 Delta Bravo. SoCal approach, beach 734 Delta Bravo is with you through 2,900, climbing to 3,500.
November 734 Delta Bravo, SoCal approach, roger, altimeter 29907.
Charts up there so you can kind of see where we are. And you can see I'm staying just a little bit northeast of our original plan here. We can do because we're VFR. Alright, pull our power back to about 20 pounds and we will pull the RPM back to 2,500. Yeah, for right now, Beyond ATC is pretty generous with giving clearances within airspaces, and it has to do with they're still refining how the airspace boundaries work. It's getting better, and I think once they get it really nailed down, we'll have much more strict compliance with airspaces. So the nitpickers out there are gonna say they don't like it for that reason, and I mean it's true, but it's an evolution over time, and it is restricted a little bit by the data that's available from flight sim. So be patient. I think just speaking as someone who flew a lot of VFR, this version of their VFR release, this stage 2, is such a jump forward. I don't think that anybody else has anything comparable short of doing one of the paid services like Pilot Edge. So you're not going to get busted for blowing an altitude or whatever, but that's coming in the future. As far as the immersion, though, that this adds to your VFR flying, if you're a VFR pilot primarily, like I do, it's really hard to overstate how much immersion it adds, or at least that's the way I feel about it. But you do have to occasionally work around some of the little weak spots of BATC or Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that's just part of the game. And we all deal with it. I believe the boundary area that they use for airspace is about 5 miles. So when you get within 5 miles of an airspace, that's where you're likely to, the air traffic control is going to call you up and give you the clearance through the Bravo or whatever. I'm trying to avoid getting within 5 miles of Bravo right now. I don't really want to fly through the Bravo since I'm trying to demonstrate a flight outside of the Bravo. So the other thing we're going to do that's a change from the original plan based on a test flight I did a little while ago is we're going to fly beyond the raceway up here by about 2 miles just to kind of make sure that we stay nice and clear of Bravo. This little open area that's visible out here is that's the racetrack that we're headed to, the horse racing track. Like I said, we'll go a little beyond that. You can see this highway goes out and it kind of bends around here. About where that turn is right there is where we're going to turn to the south.
Southwest 235, cleared direct Mikey, cross Mikey Ave or above 7,000 feet, clear ILS Zulu runway 08. Cleared direct Mikey, cross Mikey Ave or above 7,000 feet, cleared ILS Zulu runway 08, Southwest 235. November 734 Delta Bravo, traffic 1 o'clock, 4 miles, converging 3,700.
It's going to be a while before I realize that my microphone is muted. I'm responding to that controller, and I think he's hearing me, but he's not. And it doesn't matter because there's no required readback on those traffic calls. In a little while, you'll see me struggling to understand why I have to use the user interface to talk to ATC, and then eventually I get the idea of what's going on. I'll try to remember as much as I can about what I was talking about, though, and in the meantime, I will cover some other things I want to discuss.
November 734 Delta Bravo, previously reported traffic no longer a factor.
One topic I definitely want to get into is whether or not it's worth upgrading yourself to the supporters tier to get access to Stage 2 VFR if you don't already have it or if you're in the early access. It's a hard call because you're buying a time-limited thing, sort of, because eventually it's going to go out to early access. So, you know, you're probably, I'm guessing it's going to be at least between 4 and 8 months before all this stuff goes into early access, because they've already said that they want to wait until they have Stage 3 completed. It took about 4 months to get from Stage 1 to Stage 2 in experimental, so if we extend that forward, that puts us around the end of the year. Since the price for the supporters tier is about twice the price that you would pay for early access, that's a tough call for you, and you'll need to decide based on your own economics. I think it's worth every penny of $60, honestly. I mean, I can't think of anybody else who has a similar product that's doing as well. I mean, the only way you get an experience even close to this is to use VATSIM, or in my opinion anyway. If you haven't bought Beyond ATC at all yet, and you're a VFR pilot, then yeah, by all means, if you've got $60 to spend, I think the supporters tier is absolutely worth it. You get in to some degree on what's going on with the thing. You're not going to, you know, it doesn't get you access to the test program that allowed me to do the preview videos or anything like that, but it does get you a little bit closer into the community and what's going on. For those of you that have been following me for a while, you know that I'm involved in the testing for this VFR process in Beyond ATC. So before I go, you know, way far into this, and I want to make sure you guys understand that I'm not paid by BATC. This video is made entirely with the publicly available build. I bought BATC with all my own money at release a couple of years ago, and my invitation in the test team comes from me being active in Discord with them, having real world knowledge and understanding software development. It's not because of my YouTube channel. This video is entirely my own opinion. The BATC team has no input on it. My long-term subscribers know well that I'm not bought by anybody. I speak for myself. Nothing I'm saying here is inside information. The test team only knows if a release is coming up based on the test versions becoming a release candidate, and we're not involved in scheduling. So I can't tell you at all when anything's going to happen. I really don't know. So what is my long-form opinion on Stage 2 VFR in BATC now that it's live? I've been waiting for realistic VFR service in flight sim for 42 years. I've been simming since like 1984. Microsoft tried to add it back in FSX, what was that, like 2006? And at that time it was a reasonable effort, but it wasn't anything like real ATC. All it did was make me want real ATC even more, but the only semi-casual option was VATSIM, and VATSIM's great, but it's intimidating for people who aren't pilots, I think, and getting started on it is a bit of a task. It doesn't have full world coverage, and the airports that are covered on any particular day, you know, it varies a little bit. When BATC came out, I mean, kind of in parallel with Say Intentions, I made a decision to buy BATC and wait for the VFR experience that they were going to deliver. For me, Say Intentions was excluded right out of the gate just because of the subscription model. Stage 2 BATC VFR is the closest anyone's gotten to a true VFR experience without using live people for the ATC. I can say that without any fear of being wrong. I don't think anybody could tell me another product like this. It's not perfect, and there's still a lot that is needed before it's going to fully scratch the itch of real world VFR pilots, but it's really close. If you're a current or a former real-world pilot, and you have the money to throw it at the temporary exclusivity of getting VFR now rather than 6 months down the road or so, and you aren't looking for a live ATC service, I think the supporters tier at this point is kind of a no-brainer. It's a massive leap. Okay, I need to interrupt myself to tell you what Pilot Muted Kurt is going to try to explain to you. I'm getting into how you set up COM2 to listen on an ATIS. So what I'm showing here is you go to the frequencies, click there, then you get the list. Right now it's on the departure side, Whiteman Field, so I'm going to click LGB on the other side, and that'll take us to the Long Beach arrival part. And here's all the frequencies. You click the little button there next to the frequency, and that'll set it into COM2. And then in your audio panel, in this airplane, it's in the GTN 750 here. Yours may vary. But get into your audio panel and activate COM2 for monitor, and you start to hear.
L819er 32 Zulu, wind 200 at 8, visibility 10, sky condition clear, temperature 27, dew point 21, altimeter 299er6, landing and departing runways 26 left, 26 right, 30. Read back all hold short instructions. Advise on initial contact. You have information, Charlie.
And when you're done with it, you can just re-click your monitor button or flip your COM2 off, and that'll shut them up. Also worth noting, you could manually tune any frequency you want into COM2. You can't talk on COM2 yet. It's for monitor only. It's a little unclear whether or not that's going to be supported in the future. Okay, returning now to the commentary I was doing before that COM2 stuff. But what about the rest of sim pilots, casual VFR simmers who don't like flying tube liners in the stratosphere, bush pilots and guys like that? That's a trickier question, especially for the bush guys. VFR air traffic to create activity at all the untowered fields and to add VFR traffic around towered fields is going to be a feature of Stage 3. So while you can use CTAF and Unicom at various dirt strips today using this product in your small town airports and whatnot, you're not going to hear anybody talking there, and this may affect your interest. But to the guys that are flying simulated weekend hamburger flights, or perhaps flying across a local metro area or further into, going in and out of Delta airports, things like that, now you're getting a lot more. And for you, I'd say it's all down to your personal wallet. The product, in my opinion, is worth the extra money. If I was choosing between this and an add-on aircraft, I'd choose this first. But remember, the supporters tier exclusivity of this piece of the product is temporary. So what I can tell you is that if you can afford it, in my opinion, it's worth it.
November 734 Delta Bravo, leaving 3,500 for 2,500, descending.
November 734 Delta Bravo, roger. November 734 Delta Bravo, contact SoCal approach 121.3.
Right about now, Pilot Kurt is realizing there's a problem with his microphone and that ATC is not hearing him. So in a moment, I'm going to be unmuted and we'll finish up the flight as it was intended.
Contact SoCal approach on 121.3 November 734 Delta Bravo. Have a good day.
Had my microphone muted there for a while. Long Beach Tower, Beach 734 Delta Bravo is with you through 2,000 feet, 5 miles east, landing with Charlie.
Negative tower on 120.5.
Over to tower on 120.5. Long Beach Tower, Beach 734 Delta Bravo is with you 5 miles east, 1,700 feet inbound landing with Charlie.
November 734 Delta Bravo, good day, Long Beach Tower, make straight in runway 26 right, altimeter 29906, report 3 mile final.
Make straight in, 26 right, Beach 734 Delta Bravo. Long Beach Tower, Beach 734 Delta Bravo is on final approach. Full stop.
November 734 Delta Bravo, wind 200 at 8, runway 26 right, clear to land.
Cleared to land, 26 right, Beach 734 Delta Bravo.
Southwest 3043, ready for departure, runway 30.
Southwest 3043, number 1 for departure, hold short of runway 30.
Hold short of runway 30, Southwest 3043.
So we're quite high, but it'll all work out. I'm not stressed. I don't mind being a little bit high when we're doing VFR. It just leaves a little bit more in reserve in case anything goes wrong.
All aircraft be advised, information Delta now, current altimeter 29904.
Ooh, picking up that breeze. Dang. Okay, now we're on the glide slope basically. A little high still, fine. Down, pops forward, mixture rich, all good.
Southwest 3043, runway 30, line up and wait.
Runway 30, line up and wait, Southwest 3043.
November 734 Delta Bravo, vacate when able.
Vacate when able for Delta Bravo. Alright. Altimeter standby. Pops up. Strobe and landing lights off.
November 734 Delta Bravo, contact ground 133.0.
Over to ground on 133.0 for Delta Bravo.